Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and we have a bit of a quickie for you today because I've pretty much spent most of the day in London. And travelling to and from London, I was at the Russian consulate's visa office in order to submit my visa application for my forthcoming trip to St. Petersburg next month, where I will be recording the voice lines for Captain Jingles in-game. Everything went more or less according to plan, but I'm a bit knackered and I really just want to go to bed. But the first thing that I need to do after getting home and before going to bed is get this video ready. So, what do we have to look forward to today? Well, this is Valkyrie in the German Tier 9 battleship, the Frederick the Great, and this is a very battleship-heavy ranked battle. This is why there were only 6 ships on each team. But the unusual thing about the current ranked battle season is that it's also arms race rules. So there are all kinds of buffs on the battlefield here for both teams to capture. For those of you who haven't played arms race or the current season of ranked battle, pay attention to those icons which indicate where the various buffs can be captured. At the moment, over there on the left hand side of the map, there are a couple of consumable reload speed buffs just waiting to be picked up, and over on the right hand side of the map you can see there are some repair buffs. So the way it works is you don't actually have to be within the capture circle. Somebody does in order for your team to actually get the buff, but the person inside the capture circle gets 2 levels of the buff, and anybody else who's just close enough to the buff when it's captured will also gain 1 level of the buff. And that's why Valkyrie is positioning herself behind this very convenient island over here as the Fletcher on his team sneaks the consumable reload buff. Although the buff isn't active yet, the actual buff canister is going to be airdropped into the buff circle. And over there on the right, going after the repair buff, is a very brave Buffalo. But Valkyrie should be close enough to both of the buff circles that when they become active, assuming the team managed to claim them, he should get both of the buffs. And any second now, the capture points, there they go, they've gone active, bingo. Buffalo managed to get the repair buff, Fletcher managed to get the consumable reload speed buff, and Valkyrie has managed to get them both, because he was close enough to both of the circles when the buffs were claimed. And of course, don't forget the guys who actually did the dangerous job of venturing into the buff circles in order to claim the buff get 2 levels of the buff that they captured, in addition to anything else that they were close enough to also receive the benefits from. Now there's a brief brown alert moment here as Valkyrie opens fire on a Musashi over there, is spotted and instantly detected and targeted by every single ship on the enemy team. But it doesn't last long, which is probably just as well. Well, this would have been a very, very short battle for Valkyrie. But the enemy team do calm down and most of them start shooting at other things. He does take some minor damage from the Musashi who returned fire at him, but for now he's pretty much concentrating on the Kronstadt over there who's sitting in open water, firing high explosive at him, and just kind of slowly reversing. Okay, the Kronstadt is angled, and, well, the thing about the Frederick the Great is that while it is a very, very tough ship, and if you build for it, its secondaries can be amazing fun, but the guns aren't particularly accurate and it doesn't have a lot of them. Nevertheless, if you throw enough shit at the wall, particularly at targets like the Iowa over there, who's given him a lovely broadside to shoot at, some of it is going to stick. So the Iowa just got a good paddling, but the Kronstadt's managed to go undetected thanks to the smokescreen that's been laid by the enemy destroyer. And he would have been able to take advantage of that smokescreen to retire and not be such an obvious target if only he would just stop shooting his guns. But he doesn't appear to have gotten that particular memo. And he keeps opening fire on Valkyrie. Now he is doing a fair amount of damage to Valkyrie. Valkyrie hasn't actually used his damage control yet, but he's been forced to use his first heal. So at the moment, Valkyrie isn't really in any significant kind of danger. And the Kronstadt keeps squandering the opportunity given to him by the enemy destroyer to get out of there, and not just be sitting in open water firing high explosive at a target that he isn't really doing that much effective damage to. Once again, he's gone undetected, Once again, he fires his guns. And while the Frederick the Great's guns are definitely not accurate, reliable, or consistent, the Kronstadt at the end of the day is still just a cruiser. And you don't have to score too many penetrations with 16-inch guns on one of those things to start giving him serious problems. In fact, he's now inside secondary gun battery range. It's at this point where the Kronstadt manages to set a second fire, and Valkyrie uses his damage control for the first time. But thanks to all of the consumable reload buffs that he's managed to stack so far, his damage control only has a cooldown of just over a minute. Still, if the Kronstadt does manage to set him on fire again, it is going to burn for its full duration, and if he was to pursue the Kronstadt any further, he'd probably be sailing into a crossfire, so instead, he ducks into here. And that's going to have the added benefit of not just shielding him from fire from the Kronstadt, but also the team are about to secure yet another healing buff. That's the good news. The bad news is that coming around the end of the island over there are two Musashis. And Musashis, of course, have the Yamato's 18-inch guns. Now, the first Musashi isn't dumb enough to come around the corner giving full broadside. He is angling. But the Musashi, like the Yamato, does have a sort of frontal weak spot in the cheek armour, even when angled underneath the two front turrets. And a hit there can result in a citadel. Luckily for the Musashi, Valkyrie's in a Frederick the Great, so naturally, even though that's exactly where he aimed, he missed. Luckily, the second Musashi is dumb enough to come around the corner giving full broadside. Unfortunately, once again, Valkyrie's in a Frederick the Great, so even at that kind of range, that guy still escaped the paddling that he so richly deserved. And now Valkyrie's in a whole heap of trouble. Or is he? Because you see, the Frederick the Great has turtleback armour, which means it's next to impossible to citadel it from this kind of range, even if you do have 18-inch guns. And if you keep firing at the obvious weaknesses on the Musashi, eventually even the Frederick the Great is going to hit them. That was the spot we were talking about, and it finally resulted in a citadel. The other thing about the Musashi is that, like the Yamato, it has very, very slow turning turrets, which means that the Musashi on the starboard side can't shoot at him right now. This guy is struggling to get his guns turned around, and at this range, even a Frederick the Great can't miss a target as big as that. So the surviving Musashi has just run out of friends and probably isn't going to be a surviving Musashi for much longer. He's got a Missouri and a Frederick the Great shooting at him now. And unbelievably, despite the fact that he just went into a point-blank range gunnery duel with two battleships armed with 18-inch guns, and there's another citadel, Valkyrie is actually coming out of this fight, thanks to using his heal, and also the healing buffs that he's managed to stack so far. He's coming out of this fight with about, if not slightly more health than he had when he went into it. What's more surprising is that despite the fact that this is a ranked battle, and there are only 6 enemy ships available for him to shoot at, and therefore there's a lot less in the way of actual hit points worth of damage available to be done in a ranked battle, he's actually done 244,000 damage. That would be an impressive amount of damage to do in a random battle with 12 enemy ships to shoot at, let alone in a ranked battle with only 6. And he's not done yet. There is still plenty of damage to be farmed. And this game could in fact still go either way, despite the fact that he's done 250,000 damage, tanked 1,000,000 damage. Both teams are still on 400 points, and both teams still have 3 ships surviving. And there's our old friend in the Kronstadt, and it looks like he's going for the reload buff, which has just become active there. So that could be quite dangerous, particularly for the Missouri, because if he pushes out to engage the Frederick the Great, and Valkyrie has seen the danger, and he's busy typing in chat, Missouri, don't push out. Do not push out to engage that Frederick the Great, because that Kronstadt is on your broadside. He may just be a cruiser, but he's got big guns, and he has just managed to get that reload buff, which would be extremely dangerous for the Missouri. Valkyrie opens up on the Kronstadt. And the fact that the Missouri is there in chat requesting support indicates that he is aware of the threat and he's not going to push out. And the Kronstadt, who I have no doubt was looking forward to the opportunity of pumping several salvos of armor-piercing shells into the side of the Missouri, has just realised, oh crap, it's that Frederick the Great again. Now the Kronstadt has a pretty fast reload on its main battery guns in the first place, and he's definitely got at least 1 reload buff. In fact, he's just taken out one of Valkyrie's forward gun turrets. Despite that, Valkyrie does still have the upper hand here. He's got a huge health advantage over the Kronstadt, and even though he only has one working front turret, his secondaries are utterly devastating him. And that one salvo there was probably the Kronstadt's last chance to actually come out of this battle alive. But Valkyrie was angled, he took minimal damage from it. The Kronstadt tried to take Valkyrie down with him with a ram, but he just couldn't get close enough before the secondaries ripped him a new one. And now the enemy Frederick the Great. Well, he didn't take many hits from the secondaries, but it's all extra damage. And that just leaves the enemy Kitakazi. 286,000, nearly 287,000 damage done in a battle where there are only 6 enemy ships to shoot at. And yeah, of course, I appreciate that a lot of those enemy ships probably had the healing buffs, as well as using their healing consumables because they're all tier 9s. And with the exception of the Kitakazi, they have healing consumables, but still, even though there was probably more actual health on the table than the mere presence of 6 enemy ships might indicate, that's still a lot of damage. And he's not done yet, because there is still a Kitakazi that needs sinking. Valkyrie's got his Hydro up just in case. There's a concealment buff about to become active, and oh, there's the Kitakazi. We found you, you little bastard. He doesn't have anything to lose by firing his main battery guns, even though he's highly unlikely to actually hit anything. Oh, and he does actually hit something. Okay, they're over penetrations, but hey, damage is damage. They're about to get the concealment buff, not that they really need it at this point. And I think the Kitakazi has decided, oh, screw it. What's the point? He's not given up. But he's not really fighting back either. He's just trying to run. He doesn't appear to be shooting at anything. No, he's trying to get into cover behind the side of the island. But the Missouri's shooting at him. He's got the secondaries of the Frederick the Great here shooting at him. And it looks like he may be about to run into some torpedoes. Yep. Yeah. Valkyrie in the Frederick the Great in a tier 9 ranked battle. High caliber, close quarters expert, devastating strike, and nearly 300,000 damage done in a game where there were only 6 enemy ships to shoot at in the first place. No matter which way you cut it, that's a lot of damage. Now, it has been a long day, and I'm a bad-tempered old gnome who needs his beauty sleep at the best of times. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.